Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, sir. I can see your screen.
Perfect. Okay. All right, let's jump straight into this. So we're going to be presenting about the proposals and the suggestion system that the CAC uses and how you can utilize it to your ability. And keep this in mind, you don't need to be on the CAC to utilize this. This can be something that you can use in your squadron. Even these skills that you are going to use in this class and learn in this class can be taken to other things if you're wanting to write a memorandum for a business, or even if you are a squadron rep or a CAC rep and want to write a suggestion. So first, I'll hand it over to Lieutenant Colonel Hess.
Alrighty. Just a side note, your presentation says loading and is not appearing, but I do know what the question is. So are there any questions about the CAC just from being here so far?
Is that better?
No, we still cannot see it.
What about now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I'll just keep it here.
All right. Since I hear no questions, I'm going to let Major Holt continue with his presentation.
It's a very dangerous thing to do. Okay. All right. So the first thing I'm going to ask all of you is why do we write proposals? Does anyone have any question or any answers to that? You remember back to Lieutenant Colonel Ender's CAC brief earlier today? And someone's going to have to let me know who's raising their hand because I can't see it. Anyone? All right. Well, that's a very astounding response.
Sir, sorry, I just had to walk away for a second.
Okay.
A suggestion or a proposal would be like, say, an idea that you had that you want to get across to somebody else. And the reason you would write that is because maybe you want to see something that changed, or maybe you see improvement for something that someone else might not see. So you would write a proposal or a suggestion so that they would so that you could get your idea across to them, and then maybe they'll think it's a good idea and then move it forward.
Awesome. That's a perfect response, honestly. So the proposals in the CAC, as you just mentioned, voice opinions and suggestions, not only to upper echelons, but also maybe even your echelon commander. So for instance, if you are a group CAC member and you write a proposal, which we'll talk about here in a minute, you could write it for an upper echelon for it to pass up even to national. It could be a region thing that you want, or it could be even just for your echelon commander. So you write it up, you pass it to your echelon commander, and they can approve it or send it back to you for review before they implement it. So just some things to think about. Ultimately, though, a suggestion or proposal is the backbone of the CAC, which means that basically if you don't have a proposal, and if we didn't have proposals on the CAC, there's a lot of things that we wouldn't be doing. A lot of work is driven around the suggestion and the proposal. All right, so we'll go into now and what makes a good proposal. Let me take up my notes here. So first thing on the list here is it's something that has a solution, that is a solution to a current problem. So basically means that you want to find something that not only affects a small group of people, but affects the better of the whole. So for instance, if you want to find, or if you see, okay, the motivation in my squadron is down right now. The cadets are not wanting to come to the meetings anymore, and I need to find something that, will fix that problem. And you find, oh, I can propose a chord for the squadron to the squadron commander. Is that something that you really want to write up and pass all the way to national if it's a squadron issue? Or if it's just one cadet who says, I can't pass the leadership test for name the reason here. Do you want to write a proposal for that, or do you just want to deal with that issue on your own, or have that chain of command deal with it? So in the grand scheme of things, you want to think about what affects a big group of people out of the group that you're studying. So most of the proposals that are on the national CAC, if you look at them, they affect a lot of cadets, including some of the ones we will talk about today. The second one is don't create a problem to fit a solution. which is straightforward. If you have something that's, this goes along with the saying, if something isn't broken, don't try and fix it. And this is a very common theme in the CAC. If a proposal is written and we already have a pretty good thing or curriculum or whatever it may be going, we're probably not going to sit and we'll listen to the opinion for sure, but we probably will not pass it up if it needs to be or implement it. Proofread as much as you deem necessary. And I don't know why the +1 made it onto the presentation, but the proofreading is essential. And this is because if you have a lot of grammar mistakes in your memorandum, obviously as your teachers say at school, it's really important that you know how to write well and make sure that your memorandums don't have those grammar issues. You will find that it's very hard to gain respect for your piece of work if there's a lot of errors in it. So that's something to keep in mind. You also want to make sure that it's easy to read. So if there's a lot of words in there that's slang for something or that is really difficult to understand for someone who's an airman or someone who's trying to implement the strategy, it's going to be very difficult for it to get past. Next is to think from the other perspective. So if I am writing a proposal about, I want to go take the squadron to a playground field trip, and I'm writing a proposal to suggest this to my squadron commander. I have to think from the squadron commander's perspective, but I also have to think from the perspective of the people who don't want to do this or don't want this to happen. What kind of arguments will they bring up? Oh, well, the playground's really unsafe, or oh, it's 110 degrees outside today. You have to think of those arguments, and you also have to refute them, meaning you need to bring up evidence and research and your own words as to why their argument is not as strong as yours and that your argument should be taken in the higher regard. Let's see here. Okay, and then at the end, think of the senior member perspective as well. So is this going to be easy to implement? If you think about a national proposal that's extremely difficult to implement, those might not get passed as easily as something like the encampment cadre proposals that we'll talk about later. Something that you think about the senior members that have to implement it and understand that if they're easily able to just do a few things to get it done, it will most likely be passed, or at least considered highly versus the other harder to implement proposals as well. But keep in mind that some proposals are going to be complex, so you need to gauge the way and what you're suggesting as well, and we'll talk about that here in a minute too. And then the last thing is answering all the fundamental questions: why, how, cost, ease, and impact. Why are you bringing up this problem? Why is it something that we should look into? How are we going to solve the problem, and how are you going to be able to implement it? The cost: what is it going to cost for me to carry out the thing that you want me to? The ease of implementation, and the impact: how will cadets or senior members or the group that you're studying be positively impacted by your proposal or suggestion? Are there any questions before we go into anything else? All right. Can everyone still see my screen? Just want to make sure we're still doing good here.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so this proposal that we're going to be walking through is one that was written, I believe it was written by Cadet Major Enders, or Lieutenant Colonel Enders, my apologies. But it is the RCLS Bronze Star Committee proposal, and this is not in effect, so make sure that you're not going to go and do this, first of all. It needs to still be approved by one more committee. But really the thing you need to think about on this proposal is the first part here, which is what we're looking at. You see the memorandum. A memorandum format is one of the easiest ways to write a proposal, and it's one of the most common. It's very short and straightforward and to the point. You'll see here, you have your echelon. So if you're at a group level, it'll look very different from what the national has written. You write the date, and the memorandum is for, who it's from, and the subject. Then you'll go into the problem and why. So this proposal was written for a committee. So it says here, this committee was established to explore options for an award recognizing the successful completion of the Region Cadet Leadership School. So this is the why of this proposal was written. The problem is currently there is no tangible award for the completion of RCLS, but there is one for the Cadet Officer School. And the problem is that it can be identified as a prestige gap, which can be a problem to a lot of cadets. And if you think about it, you need an RCLS to get your ECR. So this is obviously a problem that's going to affect a lot of people. Let's see. You'll want to, again, we talked about finding something that'll impact the better of the whole, which means that this proposal will definitely impact a lot of cadets. Next is the solution and how. You really want to identify here in this part of the memorandum how you are going to solve the problem and what kind of solution you are presenting. So again, this committee believes that in order to minimize the prestige gap, an award should be given to the RCLS graduates that closely matches but does not equal that of Cadet Officer School graduates. So they list out what the solution would be and how they would be able to do it. So authorizing it in the awards manual and authorizing the star. And it shows a little bit of the impact here as well. All right, so next we move on to the clarification and just really going into detail about your proposal, because if you send up something and it's not clear, it's going to be very difficult to understand exactly what you want them to do. So if a cadet who completed an RCLS chooses to short stack the ribbon, the Bronze Star attachment would be authorized for wear on their highest cadet program ribbon. So if this proposal was not detailed enough to where it was clear for the person who's trying to implement it, someone might write if a cadet completes RCLS, then the Bronze Star attachment would be authorized for wear on their highest ribbon. You need to go into depth and make sure they understand exactly what you want. Cadet program ribbon means that it's going to be an achievement. The short stacking is showing that only when you short stack, you are able to put it on your highest ribbon. And again, it also states a little bit of an impact as well. I'm trying to move this so I can see what it says here. So you really need to be in depth and in detail about what you want your person to do after they read this. All right, this is a very important part as well. You need to outline what kind of cost and the ease of implementation it's going to be. So for this memorandum, it was very nice because there's not much of a cost to this. So it's an easy addition to implement into the cadet program, as the Limburg Achievement Ribbon, the Bronze Star Ribbon, and the RCLS course already exist. So bam, we don't really need to do much to get this done. The only requirement necessary for the successful enactment of this proposal is the written authorization be placed in the awards manual or the regulation, detailing what has been previously brought up. And they even gave an example as to what it could be changed to, which is a really good way to kind of give an example of what you want them to do as well. In the last part of this memorandum, basically it's stating why you're doing this, the impact that you're doing this for, so what this will impact. Again, it says it will help reduce the stigma of attending an RCLS to achieve the ECR award, and could even close the prestige gap that was mentioned earlier in the memorandum. And you also want to include your contact information as well and your signature. So you will have a finished product of a memorandum that you can pass up. Before we go into some hands-on time, I want to just point out that on the CAC, there are different kinds of proposals that you can write. Usually at the squadron and group level, staff study papers and advocacy papers are a big common medium that's written for cadets to voice their opinions. If you don't like how the region is doing something, you can write an advocacy paper about how to change that. And that could be sent to your CAC, and they can either pass it up or write a memorandum and pass that up as well. All right, if there are no questions, I will pass it over to Lieutenant Colonel Hess.
All right, so before I start that section, I know he just gave a lot of information. So if you would like more in-depth information, or there was some parts you needed some clarification on, there's 2 places that are really good to look. One of them is going to be Learn to Lead, Leadership by Committee. It's a spinoff of the leadership books. If you look in it, it tells you how to do many things that happen on the CAC. And then another good place would be Leadership Chapter 8. That is going to be effective communication, and it explains how to write a staff study and some of the other things that were mentioned that weren't actually gone through in this class. All right, so now we will begin doing some examples, and I would like us to discuss what we think is good about them and bad about them. And then I'm going to go into and explain why the CAC either voted for the proposal or against the proposal. So the first proposal that we are going to look at is the milestone uniform inspection. And the basis of this proposal was they wanted there to be, at every milestone, a uniform inspection to ensure that cadets are actually wearing their uniforms properly, because that was a common issue that they thought they were seeing, was higher level officers were not wearing their uniform properly. And if we look through and we scroll to the second one, it says the proposal scoring is based on CAP P 52-30, August 2007, and continues to go into detail talking about how the scores that must be achieved for each level of milestone. As we go down, it says it's based on an echelon. So it says that for the Billy Mitchell, the cadet will be tested by the squadron commander, and for Amelia Earhart, they have to be inspected by a wing proctor. And then for Eaker, they are required to be, you could scroll more, please. And then for the Eaker, they have to be inspected by a region proctor. And then for the Carl A. Spots Award, it should be done by the Spots proctor. That is the basis of this proposal. If there's anything you'd like me to read word for word, I will, but I would like us to discuss the good, the bad, something that you might want to change, things like that. Does anyone have anything they'd like to say?
What sorts of good or bad things do you see about this memorandum? Just feel free to put it in the chat or raise your hand.
All right, we got a. Oh, Nathaniel Curtis, did you want to make a comment or no?
I did, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think that this is actually a very, very good idea. I see lots of cadets in my squadron who have tiny mistakes that grow even over a month's time. So if we could do this, that would help throughout their entire time with CAP.
Yes, I agree with that. Is there anything else anyone else would like to say? All right, so the CAC decided that this proposal has a lot of good things to offer, but the standards for cadets to promote instilling this will ensure that the cadets will have better uniforms, like we were saying before, and that they seem more put together than other cadets would have. But against this, the NCAC shot this down because of the logistical nightmare that this would create, because now there has to be both wing proctors and region proctors. And having these people meet up would be very difficult, because if you have ever tried to schedule a spots exam or know anyone who has, that's already an issue just to get the proctors with the cadet. And now if you were doing this, you would cause that to happen 5 times in the cadet's career. And so we felt that that would make it much more difficult and to make people promote, and would end up holding them back in the end, even if they were ready for their promotion. So the CAC decided to vote against this proposal and did not take further action with it. Is there any comments about that? No? All right, we will go to
We have a comment from Cadet Staff Sergeant Megan Lane.
Okay.
I just wanted to say something I noticed, that maybe if we're having a problem with the uniform, that it should be addressed at grade start and different programs be applied instead of this, since it's such a problem with proctors.
That is a really good idea. And I see there is a comment that says, I think this is a good idea because it helps to ensure that higher up cadets are set good examples. And the RCAC did agree with this proposal, but because of the fact that there were so many other issues, which, as we talked about before, ease is a major factor in letting a proposal be passed, that it was shot down, even though there were many good aspects that were seen for this proposal. Alrighty, so we are going to go to the next proposal, which is encampment cadre. So I believe you heard something about this proposal before. This proposal states that, if you were not aware, that cadets are not required to go to their student encampment in order to staff an encampment. And for many, this could be an issue. So this proposal was set to have it added to the encampment guide that the overall encampment program sets the goal for each student as an individual to learn. And because you were not required to go as a student, they felt that this caused a lot of information gap within this manual. And so they proposed that we change it and add to the manual that a cadet is required to go to a student encampment before they are allowed to staff an encampment. What are some good things that we can see about doing this?
I think that's good because you can see, because like the cadre has experienced what the cadets are experiencing right now.
Yes, that is very, very true. Are there any other good things we can see?
Cadet Chief Master Sergeant Daniel Rice, go ahead.
I think that they should have to go to encampment because they need to be able to kind of experience that to really connect with people, whether it's in their flight or if they're like an officer in charge on support staff or something like that. They need to be able to connect with those students and have been in that position of being a student there.
That is true. Are there any other good things? All right. What are some
Cadet,
bad?
There was another comment from Cadet Staff Sergeant Megan Lane.
Oh, okay. I cannot see it. If you could read it, sir.
She was
Okay.
raising her hand.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, something I noticed is that the people who haven't gone to encampment previously and that are staffing, they wouldn't be used to the procedures, so then they might mess up and that. And then also whoever become a student and then become a staff will have the experience needed and do different things than what happened, make it better.
That is very true. All right,
There
so
was
I want to
another question that just was asking for clarification on whether the proposal was for wing, region, or national.
So these proposals were all sent to the region CAC, and this is them deciding if they would like to send it on to national or if they would like to just keep it at the region level or not do anything with that at all. If they were sent to national, I'm going to talk about the results that national gave, not the results that the RCAC gave. So let's move on to bad things. What is something bad that could be seen with this proposal? Some negatives.
Nathaniel Curtis, go ahead.
A cadet would not be able to have the experience of first seeing encampment. He wouldn't be able to have the experience of originally going to encampment and being led through that.
Okay, that is very true. Let me restate my question just a little bit. What are some bad things that would happen if this proposal was passed? Or what are some negative consequences or side effects if this proposal was passed? All right. So
Go
I know
ahead,
that this
is Cadet Staff Sergeant Megan Lane again.
Okay.
Sorry, I have to scroll through the list.
You're good.
Something that'd be negative is if somebody went to a different event, for like example might be JRTC, they might have very similar experience that benefit them, and also they would have to pay twice a kid might have to pay twice to attend encampment, which might be a financial struggle for them.
That is a very, very good point. Alrighty. So some other negatives that the RCAC thought of for this was it could be too many regulations that are put on an encampment and takes away some of the freedom of the encampment commander. And they felt that it should be up to the encampment commander about if they say yes or no. And it can also be difficult if you have a very small encampment because you might not have that many options of staff. So having some people who might not have been there before but are experienced and you know that might be a better option than not having enough staff at all. So what do we think that the RCAC did with this? Did they pass it up? Did they shoot the proposal down? Did they revise it and do nothing with it? What are we feeling?
Cadet Captain Andrew Nazario.
Yes. I just wanted to add on to the negative effects because I already kind of know what happened with this proposal. I would think a negative effect of making it fully state that it's required for staffing encampment, or not requiring them to staff encampment is you're going to have a lot of people applying that are basically just going to get solely rejected if it's already made up in encampment commander's mind that they will not get accepted if they're not already been into encampment. So it's kind of like a psychological trick that can happen that basically can affect someone's self-esteem if they were originally told nothing against staffing without a basic encampment, but then getting rejected. That could be hard on them.
Yes. All right. So the RCAC passed this proposal to national, and the national CAC decided that it was a good idea, but they changed our proposal from the original. So instead of adding it as a you have to do this, it was added as a suggestion. So you were only suggested to require your cadets to go, and it was added more of a best practice than a you have to do this, which still allowed for that freedom and all of those things that we mentioned that could be bad if we would have implemented it. Alrighty, let's go to the next proposal.
And Colonel Hess, if I may add something. Another reason that the NCAC did not put this as a mandatory thing is because a lot of our cadets come from JROTC, and they're able to get an encampment type credit there, which means that if you have been to JROTC, like right here, it says require all cadet cadre to have previously attended an encampment as a student or have received encampment credit through JROTC. So this was another important deciding factor, because if you just straight out say all cadets must have a student encampment through CAP, then all of those cadets who have had their encampment through JROTC would not be able to staff an encampment unless they go to Auxiliary Patrol encampment, student encampment, if that makes sense. So I just wanted to add that in there as another deciding point that the RCAC and NCAC thought about.
All right, so this next proposal is known as the Chief of Snacks proposal. And the proposal states that there's 5 pillars of Civil Air Patrol, and that there needs to be someone who is able to look over this in a cadet role, because there is no cadet role that has to watch over the 5 pillars currently. So the proposal is to assist the 5 pillars of wellness resilience program in the effort to encourage CAP members to eat well. We recommend the following changes. Introduce a Chief of Snacks position to the cadet chain of command for use in squadrons and at events and activities. And this role would be to, can you scroll down some? I can't read it all. I want to make sure I say it right. Thank you. So this role would be making sure that snacks were provided are healthy, appropriate, and time and place of reasonable proportion, educating cadets about the type of snacks, nutrition in snacks, and healthy choices, and instituting and directing cadets to helpful resources and information on nutrition, healthy eating, and other contributing factors. And that pretty much means that they were trying to make sure that cadets were eating healthy and knew how to take care of themselves, because a big problem with teenagers is that they like to eat sugar and junk food, which can be really bad for your health in the long run. So the chief of snacks position was meant to help counteract those effects and make sure that cadets are eating healthy. So what are the good objectives about this? What would be helpful to the cadet program? Alrighty. So some helpful things that the CAC came up with was it can bring awareness to healthy eating habits and support the 4 pillars of wellness. And that is a really big deal just because there isn't anything that currently does that in a cadet role. So what are things that might not be good about this proposal, or things that we would think to not do this proposal?
Cadet Chief Master Sergeant Daniel Rice, go ahead.
I don't think that's a really necessary role, because I think that kind of moms already fill this role, like parents and stuff, and so it's not really necessary, I don't think. They talk about good eating habits and stuff in health classes on like PT nights and stuff like that already, and so I just don't think it's that necessary for a whole staff position.
Okay, I agree with that. Do we have any other comments from anyone else?
This is Cadet Major Holt, just adding in here. The PT officer, the first sergeant, for instance, is the person who's usually in charge of physical training. And this might be different for a lot of squadrons. For my squadron, it's the first sergeant is in charge of PT. And with that, the first sergeant usually takes on the role of ensuring proper health through the cadet corps. So with that being said, I remember when I was looking at this proposal for the first time, I brought that up as the first sergeant could potentially fill this role. I just want to bring that up.
All right, so the RCAC decided not to pass this proposal to national, and in the end shot down this proposal because there was nothing similar in the Air Force curriculum, and everyone already agreed that the first sergeant could easily fill this role, and maybe just spreading the word more that they should be talking about healthy lifestyle choices and eating choices is part of that lifestyle. It's not just physical fitness, it's also what you eat and what you do with your time. Are there any questions about that proposal? No? All right, we are going to go to the last proposal that we are going to discuss tonight, and that is going to be the COS Star Short Stack. So as you heard before in Lieutenant Colonel Ender's class, originally you were not allowed to wear your star when you were short stacking if you were above a certain grade. And this was causing a lot of issues just because you already have attended the activity. So why should it be okay to allow one person to wear a star that's attended the activity, but if you decide to short stack, you don't get to wear that star anymore? And most people felt that there wasn't a reason to separate this. So that is why this proposal was created. It was just to simply state that if you can wear it on this one ribbon, why should you not be allowed to wear on higher ribbons? So then this proposal was written, and it just has stuff that it would like added to CAP Manual 39-1. And also, it would like to be a part of the award of CAP medals, ribbons, and certifications in 39-3. So if we scroll down, you can see that number 4 says if a cadet graduates from COS and then earns the Earhart, Eaker, or Spots Award and chooses to reduce the height of their ribbon rack, they must remove the Mitchell ribbon with the silver star. This proposition being made would allow the cadet officers to move their silver star to the highest cadet achievement award if they reduce the height of their ribbon rack. And to many people, this might not sound like a big deal, But for a lot of officers who decide to short stack, that is a way of them showing what they have done. That's what your ribbons normally are there to do. It's not for you to show off, it's to show what you've done. So moving that star to higher level ribbons allowed them to show that what education and training that they actually had in the program. So what are some positive sides to this? One person, what's some positive sides? I listed like 6. You can steal one of mine if you want.
Cadet Staff Sergeant Megan Lane, go ahead.
I was thinking that this is beneficial to a lot of other cadets who are younger in the program than officers, like NCOs and airmen, so they could see what medals you can get even if they short stack, so they can still have that look up into effect.
That is very true. All right, so what are some other objectives that might not make this proposal very viable? All right, I'm going to go through the list of reasons why proposals get passed or not passed, and let's hear what your comments are. So for cost, what would be the cost on this? Is there a large cost, no cost, medium cost?
Cadet Chief Master Sergeant Daniel Rice, go ahead.
I would say there would be pretty much no cost because you already have the stars, you already have the ribbons, so you could just move those to different ribbons. I mean, it doesn't really cost that much.
All right, what about implementation? Is it really hard to implement? Is it somewhat easy to implement? What are we feeling about that? All right, so implementation would be rather easy just as Chief Master Sergeant Rice had already stated, there isn't much of a cost with this because the Silver Star is already going to be purchased by that cadet or given to them by their squadron. And implementation would just be revising what the sentence says in the manual, which would be a 1-sentence review. So implementation should not be a lot of work, which is why the NCAC decided to pass this proposal. The proposal was good because it was an easy implementation and does not cost any extra for national headquarters to produce. It was also simple to read, and it was really easy to understand this proposal. If you see, this proposal was only 1 page. It wasn't even a full page, which made it really easy for the NCAC to clearly understand what is going on with this proposal. There wasn't too much, there wasn't too little. It was just the perfect medium for everyone to understand. Are there any questions about any of the proposals that we went through today? Why they passed, why they didn't?
Cadet Senior Airman Grace Muller, go ahead.
Would you agree with how the CAC handled all of them and the passes?
I agree with all of their reasoning. So the biggest thing that everyone should realize about the CAC is it doesn't matter how strongly you feel about something, it's down to the facts. So most of the time it's going to be, as you saw, I said for and against. So the for and against is going to turn out into like a pro-con list. So what are the pros, what are the cons? If there's more cons than pros, it might not be worth it in the end to implement that exact the way it was written in the document, to implement it that way. But if your proposal gets turned down, you are welcome to rework your proposal and rewrite it. So if one of the issues was ease of implementation. Then what you could do is go back through your proposal and try to rewrite it again and find a new way to implement that would be much easier than it was before. So I feel like the proposals that were not passed were good proposals to not pass, because there were more issues with the proposals than there were positive aspects with the proposal. But if someone were to rewrite that proposal, my opinion might change. Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions about those proposals?
All right. Well, if there are other questions, you are always welcome to email. Lieutenant Colonel Enders put his email in the chat earlier to. Oh.
I think we lost Major Holt.
All right, I will continue saying what he was going to say. So if you guys have any questions about anything, Lieutenant Colonel Enders did put his email into the chat earlier today. Oh, he's back. He can finish saying.
All right. The red hang up button is not to minimize your enlarge your screen. It actually hangs with the phone call, just letting everyone know. So, yes, Lieutenant Colonel Enders did put his email in the chat earlier today. You're also welcome to email me. I'll put my email in the chat as well here in a few minutes, so you can ask all your questions. I won't. I try not to help write stuff. I try to guide you in the direction to start writing it. But I have a few ideas on ways that a region CAC can help with suggesting how to write certain things. And if you ever have any questions about how to write a staff study paper or an advocacy paper, the SDA guide with the examples or chapter 8 of your leadership textbook is a great resource for you to go and see. But ultimately, anyone can write one. Anyone can send it to the Squadron CAC or the group if you don't have a Squadron one, and that is a great way to get suggestions up and running. All right. If there are no other questions, and that is all I have, thank you for coming today. This concludes our cadet session for the conference. Stay tuned tonight for the award ceremony, which will be happening in about 15 minutes. It'll be a recorded link, so you won't have to get dressed or come online or anything like that, I believe. But thank you again. Have an excellent day, and yeah, bye-bye.
The playlist is already open if they just want to go watch it now.
Awesome. Okay. Well, there you go. The place is already open.
A big thank you to all the people who were involved in planning this, Cadet Major Holt, Hess, and the rest of the RCAC board and members in their incredible planning in difficult times. They did an excellent job. So thank you very much for all of your hard work.
And thank you, Sarah, as well, for helping out with the classes. We appreciate it.
All right, with that, I'm going to kill the recording.